would just mention that we provided 3 sample counties, a large, a medium, and a small, as you point out, Senator Leno. And within each of those categories, if you were to look at all the large counties, side by side, you'd see all kinds of differences. So it's not like this is the picture of the large counties, it's a picture of a large county. So if you were to look at all the smalls, you'd see some where jail population has trended downward, and that's really one of the core points that we wanted to emphasize in the report. It needs to be understood at the county level by the decision makers, what's going on here, what's happening, what policies are working, what might we want to shift. So it's a really interesting and diverse picture across the state.
Those counties were picked because they had strikingly diverse patterns, not because they were representative.
Right.
Got it.
Well,
Thank you. Senator McGuire.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman, and thank you for bringing us together, and thank you for the wonderful presentation, and to be able to follow Senator Leno, I'm grateful. Just a couple of items. One is just want to talk about incentivizing, I think, some of the challenges and come directly off of the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors last December. And we have been lucky that we have had significant collaboration between the sheriff, the DA, the probation office, as well as the public defender, which has helped. But as we have heard, in some counties, that's not always the case. And in fact, there have been challenges with the relationships and the allocation of funds. And I bring that up because there are some counties that are going to be more focused than others, just like everything else, on whether it's mental health services, job training, substance abuse, and those that are going to be focused more on incarceration. And the reason I bring that forward is there a way to be able to incentivize when the data backs it up? And by the way, and I think the chairwoman has brought forward many of study that have showed that the more we focus in on the front end, on providing services, whether it's mental health services, substance abuse counseling, not just AA or NA, but getting into substance abuse counseling or job training, the lower the recidivism rate will be. And so is there an opportunity as we move forward to be able to incentivize, based off of data, those services, whether it's through a day reporting center or in another venue, if it shows that the incarceration rate is lower by providing the services needed to those that are going through the system. And finally, I think the biggest gap that we have is on mental health. And many times, county jails and emergency rooms are used as de facto become our mental health facilities or holding areas. And that is a significant gap, and I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, but you talk to counties or even in the state system, that is the biggest need as well. Can you address how we can potentially, if you will, shake the chow bowl and assist counties, data-driven, on providing those services if it lowers recidivism and, frankly, incarceration rates?
So the system is intertwined. County systems are intertwined. If you know the DA, the police arrest, the DA, the police or the sheriff arrest, the DA files, the judge sentences, the probation department supervises, and so as you try to incentivize, you know, a model like 678 goes a long way because they're interrelated. And when you have somebody come before you, if you're resourced effectively, then you can make decisions. As I said really early in this conversation, realignment wasn't built to incarcerate your way out of the issue. And so what you see, and it's been slow moving because counties overlaying a state system on a county system is incredibly complex. And so as you do that, counties, sheriffs, probation departments, police, everybody's coming up with programs that impact that. When you talk about simple incarceration, it's really a difficult measure because, you know, at one point, 36 counties had either a self-imposed cap or a federally imposed cap upon them. And so their numbers often are static. That's changed with Prop 47. So it's not simple.
And if I use the word simple, no.
You didn't.
Yeah,
You didn't.
Yeah,
I
so.
just like to say that a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely not a simple issue. I guess So have the honor to be able to represent 7 counties, and there's probably 4 different opinions on how to be able to go at this issue. And 2 are straight incarceration. So we take a look at what it's costing taxpayers, and frankly, the lack of results that we continue to get when we look at straight incarceration. So that's why, and we're still very early, right? We need to be able to see continued trends. But I guess that's why I'm getting at how can we expedite, whether, as the senator had just spoke to, those that may still believe that straight incarceration is going to be the answer. Because I think that what we've seen is there's always going to be a need for that based off of what the offense is. But better outcomes and savings for taxpayers, quite frankly, too. So I don't know if anyone else has any thought on that, because it is ingrained at times.
I think, just reflecting on my own experience working in another county, I think I don't know how you would incentivize this, but probably the most important factor is something you alluded to already, or that was alluded to, I think, by Senator Bell, and that is the fact that having the different participants commit themselves to working together to solve these problems at the county level. And in those counties where that's happened, they don't have to agree upon everything, but we have seen, and I think Linda would plenty of evidence that apart from on all these issues, progress is being made. I don't know how you incentivize that, but I think if there's one key factor that differentiates counties apart from their resources, it's how well those the members of the stakeholders all work together to solve these problems. I don't know how you incentivize that.
Well, I think the best way I've seen it is by funding. And
My department.
yeah. And the only reason I mention that is because I think there will always be relationship challenges with some, not in all counties, but in some, and that's where I feel financial incentives could assist. But just a thought.
So why don't we'll all take this under advisement, right? I think we recognize 678 as one of the really successful new wrinkles that California came up with. And if there are ways of adapting that to our post-Prop 36, post-Prop 47, post-109 world, that would be really helpful. Senator Monning, I think you had.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first I want to thank all of you for your service and dedication. This is very helpful, and you've obviously all been leaders in these different arenas, and the data collection is critical to informing us. I wanted to pick up on some of the comments made by Senator Bell related to data collection, the difference in counties with reference to bail schedules. I represent 4 counties. I have 2 counties adjacent to each other with very dramatically different bail schedules. One does not have jail overcrowding. The other one is under federal court order because of overcrowding, and not surprisingly, the one with the higher bail schedules is suffering from the overcrowding. In your data collection, and then you get more jail population who are pre-trial, who are held often for long periods because of high bail, with convicted, now including felons doing time in county jail facilities. And so you create this environment for those that have not yet been convicted in an environment with convicted felons, often for a long pretrial period because they waive constitutional rights to speedy trial. Isn't there I know you're not lawyers necessarily, but it seems to me there's an equal protection issue to be charged with a similar crime in County A as in County B, but to face differing bail schedules. I don't know if anyone's ever challenged that from an equal protection point of view. But back to the data collection, do you have data that illustrates that difference between counties, and any sense of counties trying to address that by adjusting bail schedules?
We do not have data on bail schedules. I remember from my own county experience, that was a factor that was brought up often when in discussions about managing the jail population. I think what we do have is, and what can be tracked quarter by quarter, and which I would hope every county is tracking on its own, I guess they need to do that in order to report it to us anyway, is the number of people who are the non-sentence population.
The which?
And you can estimate the effective bail schedules in some ways by looking at what happens to that population within the county. Across counties is a whole, that's a policy issue that I'll leave it to you folks to address.
Right, but it does seem, did you have a comment on that, or?
Long, ongoing conversation across the state. Little Hoover, took a look at it. It is incredibly complex. It is county by county. It is schedules that are done that, are a bigger picture than I think that we could address at this juncture. Yet again, reckoning with the culture of counties.
Yeah, and again, I'm the first to respect the discretion we vest in judges who are perhaps in the best position, being informed by district attorneys and defense counsel and probation reports, et cetera, but often that kicks in more at the time of sentencing post conviction. And I think part of what we're seeing with incentives through realignment is more discretion in evaluation of somebody charged with a crime and the nature of the crime, and are there diversionary settings other than jail that protect public safety but maybe inure to the benefit of that charged individual as well as to the community in the long haul. But to have disparate bail schedules, to me, just seems fundamentally out of sync with predictability, and if we're trying to reduce overcrowding in county jails, it would seem hard to defend higher bail schedules in one county over another, especially when they're facing federal court supervision or orders to reduce that jail population. Would seem a place to start. And I know that goes beyond the purview of this, but I think that data would be helpful to us for potential addressing that question. And maybe there's a strong argument why counties should preserve that. I'm just not aware of it, and it seems it would inform our decision-making if that were part of data collection, particularly when we look at overcrowding issues. Is it a function of disparate bail schedules?
Just to make this even more complicated, because I'm not into simplifying today, let me say this. Pretrial programs, robust pretrial programs, have had impacts on these very issues. Counties that hold misdemeanors rather than only felons have impacts on these issues. And so you see, juxtaposed to each other, if County A is holding misdemeanors, pretrial moves well and goes well. Bail schedules are, generally reasonable, so you see a fair amount of that roll out and play out. When you have counties with capacity trying to insert a pretrial program because the threshold may be higher, they have a harder time getting traction. So complication after complication, county by county, impact these very issues. So, but a good issue to raise. I should disclose at this juncture I'm married to a judge, so I don't know that I agree with all of the premises you said about how wonderful they are. No,
Great. Well, better you said it than me.
Yeah, I wanted to get it out. I felt like I was not telling you the whole truth.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think you raise a very interesting issue, which we might want to look at in the larger context of the Public Safety Committee, which is pretrial bail schedules, et cetera. Thank you. In the interest of time, I would just like to add a few things that that I'd like you to let us know at some later time. Really, if some of these things may be very easy to collect and add to the 12 elements that you have. Some of them may be difficult. It would just be helpful to know which are more complicated. But you told us already that race, gender, and age would be easy information to get. we've heard that mental health status may be a complicated thing to get, but I think you've heard that there is great interest in the legislature in understanding to what extent mental health is coming into play. But there are other data that I think would be useful, and I'd just like to know at some point from the BSCC if it's easy to collect or hard. One is if you could divide the charge categories into drug, property, and violent crimes, just so we have a better idea of the jail population. And then, as many members have suggested, that would it be difficult to simply get data on reentry capacity, such as is there short-term supportive housing, job training, local drug treatment? And that wouldn't address evaluating how good it is, but what I've heard from a number of sheriffs and others is that there's no place for people to go once they're released. So it would just be interesting, I think important for us to know about that. And let me see, what were the other ones? Yeah, the alternative custody options. And one of the things I'm interested in under the community conditions part of what you're collecting and looking at is that there wasn't very much about school systems. And I think it would be helpful for us to know, frankly, the truancy rate, the dropout rate. And I'm interested in whether or not there are career technical education programs which have been shown to keep young people in school. Just, so we have an idea of what's available a little bit in terms of prevention. But again, I really want to thank you very much, for laying this groundwork for information for us, because there's a lot we can learn from each other, and and the legislature really needs this, because in the end we have to make budget and policy decisions. So, so thank you so much for doing this. Oh, Senator Stone, you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. And I'm absorbing a lot of what's going on here today, and I can kind of speak from a county perspective where our public defender, our district attorney, our sheriff, our probation officers have been united in basically drinking out of a fire hose when AB 109 was implemented. And as a result, our jails became congested. Right now, 25% of our jail space is taken up by people that have been sentenced as kind of state prisoners more than a year. In some cases, we've had county prisoners that have been sentenced that would have otherwise gone to state prison for up to 16 years in our local jails, which is a problem. We were part of the $500 million grant to build a new jail in India, which is under construction now, but probably won't be open until late 2017. And I can tell you that counties, at least from my perspective, the fourth largest county in the state, was really ill-equipped to take on this responsibility, especially when you look at the mental health and medical intervention that is required of us now to take care of this population. And my colleagues are absolutely right. It's done in maybe a county hospital if you have one, or it's done in an emergency room, or it's done in jail. And as a result, we're under federal or attorney lawsuits against our county because we're not able to logistically provide the level of service that you would typically find in a state penitentiary environment, where the construction of a state penitentiary can allow for these types of services to be given. So when I look at your figure 1, and it looks like there's a leveling off in county jails, did you take into consideration those counties like ours that is under federal kick? So, well, the problem that we have in our jail system now is because it's completely full and we're under federal order for every prisoner that goes in, one must go out. We have people in our court system now that are not willing to plea bargain at all because they say, you know what, I'll plead guilty. I'm going to go to jail. And in some cases, they're released within hours or days and don't have to subscribe to any program. So do your metrics take that into consideration? Because I can tell you in Riverside County, I don't believe that the crime rate's going down, especially violent crime. I think the crime rate is going up. And what is the impact of these federal kicks in skewing the results? And then I appreciate all the measures that you have here today, but I don't see number 6, recidivism highlighted here. Do we have any data as to what recidivism was prior to AB 109 and what is the recidivism rate post AB 109?
I think that any question about recidivism needs to begin by asking whose recidivism we're asking about. There is, I don't want to sound dogmatic, but there is no such thing as a county-level recidivism rate. There's recidivism rates for particular populations. So there was a study going on that's comparing, that I think you're going to hear about in a few minutes, that's comparing several critical populations here. That is a pre-109, post-109 supervision populations. But of course, there's a larger felony population as well to be considered. And the questions that you're asking have to have as much to do with that, the whole felony population, as they do with just those that have been affected by AB 109. So my only recommendation is that we encourage and support program by program recidivism studies with clearly defined populations of interest. But a general question, what has happened to the recidivism rate of everyone in the world who's in California? Since I don't think we can provide a meaningful answer to that question.
But I think if you're going to have a true measure of the success of this program, when you look at recidivism in each respective county and what it was pre-AB 109 and post-AB 109, we need to know whether or not this program is making our communities safer or is it making them more dangerous. And then the last issue that was brought up was incentivizing. And the best incentive is money. And I will still make this complaint, and certainly just for informational purposes to you, not to effectuate what you're doing, but it's been very clear that there was a constitutional guarantee to counties that they would be given 100% of the money to take care of these new responsibilities that have been imposed on them. And even by the LAO's own admission in a prior hearing, counties are only receiving 60 cents on the dollar to take care of these populations. And I believe that if the counties were made whole, that they would not have probably some of these capacity issues. They wouldn't be having these mental health or medical care lawsuits against them, putting them in harm's way, and the citizens in those counties in harm's way for not being able to provide the services that are mandated by law. So it is my hope that as we continue down the budget process that we give the county the resources to fully implement the goals of AB 109, provide the mental health treatment, the vocational skills, so that we can get these people not only out of our jails, out of our prisons, but hopefully put them in a situation where they can become productive members of society with a trade or a job. So thank you for your